recorded, that's fine. You can turn off your video. That's totally up to you. And also, there'll be a giveaway at the end of the events. Kat will be presenting that. You don't have to be here to win. Everyone has been entered to win. We'll announce it on social media, but if you're able to stick around, there will be a giveaway we're doing for everybody, or for one person at the end. So I will hand it to our MC. Once Kat gets everything set up. Are you good to go, Kat? Or I'm sorry, Allison, are you good? Perfect. I'll hand it to Jennifer, who will be our MC for the day.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be hanging out with the cool kids today.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Betty. How are you?
I'm great.
I love that dress. So pretty. I hope everybody's doing great today. Just good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the annual Louisvillian of the Year event. So exciting. I'm Jennifer Bayless, anchor reporter with WLKY, recently named the 5 o'clock anchor. So I'm honored to be doing that now, and I'm honored to be here with you and everybody today. We want to thank everybody for joining us for such a special virtual event, and congratulations, everybody, for adjusting to this new world that we're living in. It's difficult for everybody right now, but you all are doing magnificent. The majority of AAF Louisville's events are geared towards their membership and focus on educational programming. But this event is when we get together and celebrate Louisville's best with each other and the community at large. For those who may be a little less familiar with the American Advertising Federation of Louisville, this is a 100-plus-year-old nonprofit professional trade organization for communications professionals born out of a desire to self-regulate the advertising marketing industry and promote truth in advertising. AAF Louisville is closely aligned with the national organization, the American Advertising Federation, which comprises 200 affiliates nationwide and is over 40,000 members strong. The Louisville affiliate is made up of individual and corporate members representing every facet of the industry: advertising agencies, media outlets, paper companies and printers, and corporate marketing departments, just to name a few. There's many more, and many of them are represented here today. Member or non-member, we of course thank each of you for signing on here and joining us via Zoom. AAF also takes great pride in working closely with colleges and universities, and of course high schools, to support their communications students. Not only does AAF Louisville offer scholarships to college students, but the organization also holds an annual marketing challenge for high school students. Now, this program allows teenagers from Louisville area high schools to form teams acting as advertising agencies and develop campaigns around educational and health and wellness issues. But it is our strong commitment to Louisville's growth and betterment that drives this Louisvillian of the Year award. We look forward to this day when we're able to celebrate the accomplishments of our city leaders who help make Louisville one of the best places in the country, and I would say the best place in the country. The American Advertising Federation of Louisville has bestowed the Louisvillian of the Year award since 1950, and it's the oldest award of its kind in Kentucky. Each year, past recipients select a new honoree based on contributions and service to the community. And now I'd like to introduce some of our past recipients who are joining us today. This is an amazing list, you guys. Our Louisvillian of the Year from 1989, Sharon Darling, with us. And Christy Brown, 1992 Louisvillian of the Year. Edward Glasscock, 2001 Louisvillian of the Year. Alice Houston, 2008 Louisvillian of the Year. Mary Gwynn Wheeler and David Jones Jr., 2018 Louisvillians of the Year. Diane Porter, 2019 Louisvillian of the Year. And this year's award recipient, I am honored to be in his presence, Ed Hamilton. Please give them all a big round of applause. Woo-hoo. Throughout this presentation today, you'll notice that we are recording this event so that we can share it with those who are not able to attend today. Secondly, we are excited to be joined by business owner, graphic designer, and one of our community partners today, Kat Gentner from Catalyst Creative. She will be conducting a live illustration throughout the event and interview. You will be able to watch her work, and the finished product will knock your socks off. First, I'd like to introduce the 2020 Louisvillian of the Year Committee Chair, John Rivers III, to thank our presenting sponsor. John?
Excellent. Thanks so much, Jennifer. With great pleasure, we want to thank our event sponsor for the 2020 Louisvillian of the Year program, Cave Hill Cemetery Company Incorporated. Cave Hill has over 170 years of history in Louisville, connecting our city's past and present. The cemetery is both an arboretum and an outdoor art museum, and Cave Hill is proud to support the local art community and trend-setting leaders and creatives like Ed Hamilton. On behalf of AAF-Louisville and the 2020 Louisvillian of the Year Committee, we thank Cave Hill for their generous support and for helping make our 2020 Louisvillian of the Year event possible today. I'll hand it back to Jennifer.
All right, thank you. Let's get to it. At this time, I'd like to welcome the 2019 Louisvillian of the Year, Diane Porter, to do the honors of introducing this year's recipient. Ms. Porter?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's my honor and privilege to be here today. Each year, for the past 50 years, the American Advertising Federation of Louisville gathers together with the past Louisvillian of the Year recipients to nominate and select the next honoree. As the 2019 Louisvillian of the Year, it is my distinct pleasure of introducing you today to the 2020 honoree, Ed Hamilton. Ed Hamilton is an artist, educator, and community leader. Born in Cincinnati, Ohio, he has been a resident of Louisville for 60 years. He's a graduate of the Shawnee High School class of 1965 and a graduate of the Louisville School of Art class 1969. Active in his community, Mr. Hamilton spends time teaching workshops and conducting lectures for public schools, colleges, and conferences. He taught sculpture at Jefferson Community College, is a Morgan Professor of Public Art at the University of Louisville, a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, and a longtime member of St. George Episcopal Church. In 2005, Ed was part of the design team that won the commission to create the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Park in downtown Newport News, Virginia. In 2009, Ed created the Lincoln Memorial at Waterfront Park. He also created a Lincoln Memorial for Center College in 2012, which stands in front of the library on campus. Additionally, his achievements include creating the Urban League Champion of Diversity Award, receiving the Black Achievers Award, and receiving the Carter G. Woodson National Education Award. Mr. Hamilton holds honorary degrees from the University of Louisville, Western University, Center College, and Spalding University. He has been married to his lovely wife, Bernadette, who is with him today for 54 years and has a son and daughter. His son, Edward III of Louisville, Kentucky, and Kendra Hamilton Wynn of McKinley, Texas, who has joined us virtually today. On a personal note, I have had the honor of knowing Ed Hamilton for some time, won't say how many years, because we had the opportunity to go to Parkland Junior High School back in the day when it was called Junior High School. And the biggest honor for me was taking art with Ed Hamilton in Miss O'Malley's art class. Ed has gone national. I went to the State Fair with my presentation from the art class, but he clearly needs and deserves his recognition today. On behalf of the past Louisvillians of the Year honorees, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce you to the 2020 Louisvillian of the Year, Ed Hamilton. Please join me in congratulating Ed. Let's applaud virtually.
Excellent. We'll throw it back to, oh, I'm sorry, Ed, go ahead.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Diane. That was just wonderful. And you know, I still remember those fine days at Parkland Junior High School. It's been a long time. I'm so pleased that, to take this honor. Let me just read you what I wrote for my dear friends. As a citizen of Louisville, Kentucky, I'm proud and honored to have been chosen as the recipient of the 2020 Louisvillian of the Year Award. I know I owe my success to many who saw my talent during the early years of my artistic journey. And it's in the spirit of family, parents that adopted me and that are now deceased, Edward Norton and Amy Jane Hamilton. They raised me to have respect for all people, the value of hard work and development of moral values. And this enabled me to extend myself into the Louisville community, to the love of my life and soulmate of 54 years of marriage, Bernadette. You know, when I met Bernadette, I said the name alone was enough for me. I seriously believe if not for her love and support, I would not be the man, the father, or the artist that I am today. And how lucky I am to be alive today. I extend blessings to all past recipients, and thanks to the Advertising Federation for taking this time to honor me for the works that I have done over the years. I feel like I'm a historian as I try to bring alive the aspects of our past histories of people and events. So I'm humbled, I'm honored, and thank you for that. Oh, may I show the award? A beautiful glass vase with the inscription engraved in the face of it. So, very welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we will go next to Jennifer to introduce Betty.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was trying to unmute my my phone. I apologize. We're all getting used to this this technology that doesn't like me. It is an honor to introduce this next speaker. We're going to take some time to learn more about our honoree. While we get set up for that, I'd like to introduce Betty Baye, who will be interviewing and facilitating this final part of our program. Betty, or Miss Baye, is a journalist, columnist, and former member of the editorial board for the Courier-Journal. Born in New York City, Betty arrived in Louisville in the early 1980s after writing for the Daily Argus in Mount Vernon, New York, and has called the River City home ever since. Beyond her award-winning journalism, Betty hosted the Betty Baye Show on WYCS-TV for 6 years and authored 2 books, The Africans, a novel, and Blackbird, a collection of columns and essays. She is a former vice president of the National Association of Black Journalists and an inductee into its Hall of Fame. Betty earned a master's degree at Columbia University, Graduate School of Journalism, and a bachelor's degree with honors at Hunter College, City University of New York. She was a 1990-91 Nieman Fellow at Harvard University. Simmons College of Kentucky awarded Baye an honorary doctorate of humanities at its spring 2016 commencement. Betty and Ed have been friends for many years. This isn't her first time interviewing him, of course, and she is excited to be a part of celebrating Ed's accomplishments today. Please welcome Miss Betty Baye.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And let me just say that it is always a pleasure. Any opportunity I have to celebrate Ed Hamilton, I try to seize that opportunity because I don't think that the world knows enough about Ed. And what I love about Ed and Bernadette is that they have never changed. Celebrity sometimes changes people, and Ed just stays the same. And so many of the people on here, we have loved on him for years, and Bernie and Ed have loved us back. And most of all, I just love their love story, see, because I don't do well in that department, but they inspire me. So I really do appreciate this opportunity. But Ed, I want to, get in your business because, I never take off my journalist hat. So I'd love to ask you interview you when I can. So I want to go back to the beginning, because if I've learned anything from you and Ken Clay over the years, it has been that I missed Old Walnut Street. And so I want to go back to Ed to talk about you actually growing up in this legendary part of Louisville that I think you and Bob Douglas, Laura Douglas's husband, and Ken, you all have kept that legacy alive in so many ways. So Ed, tell me about growing up there. I think in your father, was it your mother's tailor shop or the barber shop?
Yes. My dad had he started out back in the late 30s, early 40s. Him and an associate opened up a tailoring shop called Your Shop. And over the years, as it progressed, when he met Amy, my mom, who was named Amy Jane Camp, and they got married, and she became a barber. And then they remodeled and put 2 barber chairs in the front of the shop and retained the tailoring shop in the back. Then it became Your Valet Shop. And so that's the place at 610 West Walnut Street, which basically is the only building that exists now on, well, it's Muhammad Ali Boulevard now, but back in the day it was Walnut Street at 6th Street. Our part of town started at 6th and Walnut. But if you will allow me, I want to just read a passage from growing up on Walnut Street that will set the stage and give you the flavor somewhat. My part of the world began on Walnut Street at 6, a magical thoroughfare and place for me. My father, mother, and I lived in a 3-story apartment building at the corner of 7th and Walnut. I still think of Old Walnut Street, now Muhammad Ali Boulevard, as it stretched from 6th all the way down to 18th Street. It was a place that I will always have fond memories of. This was the heart of the Negro community in Louisville during this period of Jim Crow in Kentucky. In its heyday, during the 30s, 40s, and 50s, my street was the mecca of cultural life for Louisville's African Americans. The block had a personality. It was warm. It was alive and warm. It could be hypnotic and yet become robust and boisterous. In between time, it could become quiet, sleeping off the pleasures of the week to recharge itself, getting ready for the next new day. This was my street, and I owned every crack and every weed in those concrete sidewalks, and I left memories that marked my place in history on those sidewalks. I have left written messages, and I carry memories of flesh left behind from scraped knees and elbows and forehead bruises as a result of my favorite pastime, roller skating. That was my town. That was part of my town. And I had such memories of in and out of the shops and all of the businesses that were on the strip of 6th and Walnut Street. The Mammoth Building, the Supreme Life Building, the Lyric Theater, the Grand Theater. You had various restaurants. You had the Liberty taxi cab stands. And everything was just so safe during my growing up time period, you see. I was kind of the original latchkey kid. When mom and dad would go to work, walk down the street to the shop, I might be a little bit late getting up, getting out, or unless I had to go to school. But when I would come home, I had my little key around my little piece of shoestring around my neck, and I'd go on up to the apartment and play around, do whatever I needed to do, tear up some stuff, investigate. You know, I was always making something. And so that was the genesis of what started this whole art thing that I'm doing at this point in my life, you see. Nobody ever knows what you're gonna be when you grow up. Who knew? I didn't know. But through some fantastic teachers, that's propelled me into this journey that I'm on now.
Well, you know, Ed, they always say that in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you've been. And it is important, I think, to continue to tell the story of Old Walnut Street, which we all know became a victim, as many of those wonderful Black places in the country were, the urban renewal, which we called Negro removal, that destroyed that strip of Louisville. It happened in Pittsburgh. It happened all over the country when people decided that when larger forces did not value that wonderful lifestyle, and to have been part of it is wonderful. And you know, we talk a lot about shoulders, and the shoulders of the people that you stood on, and from those people from Walnut Street, whose names would be forgotten if not for you and Ken and Bob and others who tell this story all the time. But I wanted to talk about one set of shoulders you stand on, or have you say a little bit about Barney Bright, how you became a sculptor. Some people only know you now, but tell that story about Barney Bright, the late sculptor. And I think many of us remember him. When I moved here, there was a clock in the middle of 4th Street, I think, and somebody said that Barney Bright designed that magical clock.
Well, as I was an art student growing up and going back and forth from art school to the Speed Museum, Speed Museum had an annual, biannual art exhibit going on this one particular year. And so as I walked in the Speed Museum, I saw this very bustamy woman up on a 6-foot plinth. And I said, oh, I wonder who did that. And it was Barney Bright. And so after I saw that particular piece, I started trying to do research to find out who he was. And so back when I was growing up, there was only a couple of art galleries in town. One was Meredith Gallery and one was Thor Gallery on 1st Street, out 1st Street. And Meredith Gallery carried some of Barney's early bronzes. And so over the years, I tried to follow, when I'd see his name someplace, I tried to follow his works. Well, fast forward to 73, go to King Ceramic Shop to buy clay for class. I was actually teaching sculpture and ceramics at Iroquois High School. And it so happened that at 2031 Frankfurt Avenue, Barney Bright's studio and the King Ceramic Shop were all in one building. The only thing that separated King Ceramic Shop and Barney's studio was just a wall. So this particular day, I'm in there buying clay to get the supplies built back up for class. And I never will forget Daniel King, that was his name, a wonderful elderly gentleman. He loved to talk art, loved to talk worldly things. He'd get in a conversation and he'd be there forever. So we were talking and I'm looking over at that wall thinking, you know, that's Barney's studio over this. If I could get through that wall, I could go in this studio. And I said, oh, Daniel, I got to get out of here. I got to get back to work. So I packed up all the clay boxes, put them in the car. And as I came outside, I looked over again at Barney's front door. And it's 2 double doors that were glass, but you couldn't see through. It was frosted glass. And so as I went on and I got in the car, I looked over again and something just would not allow me to get back out of the car and go over there and knock on his door. I guess I figured, well, it's the 70s. I got this huge afro. I'm looking like Superfly. And I'm thinking, this man gonna look at me and think, what do you want, young man? You know. So I'm sitting in the car and all of a sudden I just getting ready to turn the ignition in the car on. And what do you think happened? He walked out the front door to check his mail box on the side of the building. Somehow I just got out of the car, walked over there very carefully, didn't want to frighten him, said, Mr. Bright, I'm Ed Hamilton. I know your works, I've seen your works. Maybe I could see you through. I don't know what I exactly said, but I do know this. I know he said, sure, come on in. Changed my life. Walked that threshold, crossed his threshold. So all these things, it was like being, what you remember in Egypt when Howard Carter put that candle through that little hole and they kept looking over his shoulder saying, what do you see? What do you see? Wonderful things. And that's where I felt when I walked in his studio and saw all these figures and heads and and molds and all kind of stuff going on that he was creating, you see. So we sat there and he said, well, where'd you go to school? I said, well, I went to the Art Center School. And he said, well, you know what? I taught out there. And he said, I saw a piece on a block, 2 square by 2 square stone block that set out in front of the art school. And the advanced sculptor students could put something on that block just to display. So we put something up. I put something up for a couple of weeks. Somebody else would put something up. Well, this particular time, he saw the piece that I had out there. And he said, yeah, I saw this piece out there. And I thought the person had some potential. And I said, well, what did it look like? He said, well, it was kind of figurative, kind of rough, had this arm over this way and the head just started this way. But what it was, I was into Rodin's, Auguste Rodin's work, the French sculptor back in the 1800s. And it was a takeoff of his Adam piece that was on his Gates of Hell, if you're familiar with that. Anyway, long story short, I said, that was my piece. Well, I never got back to school that day because we sat there and we talked. He said, I got a job coming up. And what that job was if you've ever gone down 6th Street in Chestnut, right at the corner of 6th and Chestnut, there's the Federal Building and there's a plaza in front of the Federal Building. He had just gotten the commission to do the winged horse. And you've probably seen it. It's not a Pegasus, it's a river, it's called the River Horse. And so I thought I was gonna do all these great things when he asked me to apprentice with him. But apprentices don't start out on the top. They start at the bottom. And that means sweeping up, cleaning up, doing whatever he needed me to do. So that's how I became the sculptor that I am today. And I never will forget it. He was a wonderful person. And
well, you
I
know,
miss him greatly.
You know what they say, when people that we love or people who have cared for us pass away, so long as we call their name, they live.
Right.
And so
They
Barney
live on.
Bright lives on through you, and there are young people apprenticing with you at Hamilton. You are their Barney Brights. And so your shop down there on Shelby Street is pretty busy when there's not coronavirus, with young people coming in wanting to see what you're up to. And, and so we all pass it on. To whom much is given, more is expected. Listen, Ed, I wanted, can we get out of the past and get a little bit to the present? Let's talk a little bit about, if Ed Hamilton, if you could have lunch with anybody, Ed Hamilton, who would you love to sit down with and have a chat?
Let's see. You know what? I'm going to first say my birth mother and my adopted mother. I'd like to have a conversation between those two. You know what I'm saying? I really would. But if it would come to the art scene of it, I'd like to have a conversation with,
Doesn't have to be the art scene, just
What-
anybody.
well, I'm saying I'd love to be between Picasso, Auguste Rodin, and Augustus St. Gaudens, and Richmond Barthet from the Harlem Renaissance time period. That would be something. That would be something.
And what is the question, Ed, that you would ask them? If you were in turn in my position and you were the interviewer, what would you ask Rodin, for example? What would you say to Rodin?
I would say, Rodin, what were your major influences? Where did you get your influences from? I'd like to know where he started, where he got his influences from. I kind of know part of that because he went all over Europe looking at all the early Renaissance sculptures and things. And he started off, he was a much older man before he even got into doing the big sculptures, you know. He didn't start as a youngster. Like, I'd like to know, how did the nuns of Sakakor, how did you get that big mansion, that big palace that they gave you that allowed you to keep that place until you would have passed away. You know, they gave him that to keep that. The state gave him, France gave him that. Paris gave him that until, so they could keep his works, you see.
Well,
So these are some questions. And I'd like to ask, what I'd really like to ask Augusta St. Gaudens, his feelings about when he did the Colored Soldier Memorial that he did for the Boston Commons. As you know, he did the Shaw Memorial, which Shaw, the captain of the 54th Volunteer Mass, and he was in charge of the colored group, colored soldiers. And I would have just liked to have been there when he was actually doing and working on that, as I did when I was working on the Spirit of Freedom, Washington, D.C., the colored soldiers, 285,000 colored soldiers that fought for the Union.
well, the wonderful thing, Ed, I think the point that you're making, and if there's young people like Aiden listening in and admiring you, is that it's not just about the sculptor. It is about reading, about studying, about knowing something about art, and introducing, as I guess you do in your classes, to people. So, you know, people see us at the end of the journey, but people don't always see what goes into, by the time you come up with one of your statues, all the research that you do on your subjects.
That's right. That's right. And when I first got my first public piece, it was the Booker T. Washington Memorial for Hampton Institute. And at the time, what I was creating and making a living at that time, I was actually doing liturgical works for Catholic churches. Now, when I got the letter wanting me to submit something for creating this Booker T. Washington Memorial, I said, how can I show them anything? Because I had never done anything on that scale. I couldn't show them one of my Mother Mary pieces or the tabernacle I just created for St. Rita's Catholic Church, or the processional cross for St. George's Episcopal Church. How are they going to see that I could create this man? So you know what I did? First thing that came to me, Western Library. I ran down to Western Library and got Miss Carmen, who was the librarian there at the time. I said, Carmen, give me some stuff on Booker T. What we got? She said, oh yeah, we got plenty of stuff on Booker T. So she gave me a stack of books. I took them back to the studio, started going through and reading about his life, who he was, you know, not realizing that he was actually a graduate of Hampton Institute. Actually walked there from Virginia and to get to Hampton Institute, and General Armstrong, who was who started that school, allowed him to come in and take classes. And when he came back and graduated, he was put in charge of the Native American dorms that they had there. So anyway, I found the perfect picture of Booker, and I created a bust. Not a whole figure, just the bust of his portrait of his head, and submitted that. And that was enough that they saw that I could create this monumental man, which turned out to be a 9-foot version of him, pointing toward the Emancipation oak tree that the slaves were read the Emancipation Proclamation under that tree during the time of the jubilation of being emancipated.
And we should point out, Ed, that as I understand it, the Western Library right there on Chestnut Street was the first Black library, the first library for Black people west of the Mississippi. Am I right about that? Or east of the Mississippi? It was like the first Black library, not just in Kentucky, but in a whole lot of states for that African Americans could go to. Because we were not allowed to learn to read and write, and that you could have that library there. Louisville is so implicated in so much of American history that I hope people here really appreciate that African American history. A lot of it lives in Louisville, and that we have living legends here, people that still know that story. Ed, let me ask you something. Creative people, we always think of them as being different. They see the world different. The world is seemingly in a strange place right now. As a creative person, what do you see through your eyes about where we are? You're of an age now that you've seen America through a lot of transitions, but as a creative person, what would you paint or draw or sculpt about this time in our lives?
Well, that's a hard question because although we are going through some hard times, I am involved in projects for others. In other words, I'm not creating anything for my own indulgence. You know what I'm talking about? Like, say, when I did my Junkology series or my confinement series that I wasn't getting paid for, but I was having fun doing them. But I'm working on projects that we are still honoring those who have gone on. Like, say, for instance, the Julius Chambers Memorial that I'm working on now, or the David Jones Memorial that I'm creating, okay? So I'm not sure what I would be doing if not for the commission works at this point. I would love to be able to kind of get away from that, and then just to see what Ed Hamilton, what else would I do as we all are going through the process of not being able to be touchy-feely, not being able to go out and have a good time. And, you know, there's so many things now that we can't do what we're so used to doing. And I just wonder, how would that be a part of my creativity? Would it block me some kind of way? You see what I'm saying? I'm just not sure where I would be if I did not have these jobs to keep me occupied through this pandemic situation that we're going through now. You understand? So I would think I would be able to just get up in one of my upper rooms at the studio and do just like I did when I came off of Booker T. I was so depressed because I thought the world was going to knock down my door. Well, it don't work that way. And so after I created that monumental piece, and I'm thinking, well, I'm set now. You know, they're going to knock on my door. I'm going to have so much work. I kept looking out the door, where had it coming? Nobody knocking on the door for nothing else. So I went upstairs, and that's how I came up with a series called Bluette, working in this kind of blue color series type thing, you see. So we go through creative changes, you see. And we try to come up with things that speak to the times of what we're going through. And at that point, I was in a depressed state of mind, and that's what that pulled me out of that.
Yes. Well, Ed, let me just say,
who knows how the creative process.
Well, somebody's going to give me the signal of how much time we have, but I don't want to leave because you've said it in passing, but it's a story that we don't hear enough about, and that is about Black love. And that woman sitting next to you, and you've mentioned it, and I think those of us who know you, but I just want you to say a little more about Bernadette, about your love story, because it's so important that a lot of people don't understand how we love and who we love and why we love. And tell me about that woman next to you. Bernadette, pull up a little bit, we can see your face a little better. Tell your love story a little bit.
You embarrassing me, Betty.
Well, you
ahead.
I'm a reporter.
You know what?
I meddle in people's business.
Look here. 1967, I took a lunch break out at U of L to go over and have lunch at the Sub, what they called the Sub, the cafeteria down in the Bigelow Hall building. Now, at the time, Bernadette was working for Dean Huffman and the late Eleanor Love Holmes. You know, Whitney Young's sister. She was Miss Alsbrook, that's what her name was at that time. Anyway, long story short, I'm down there with one of my friends that I grew up with, Sharon Clark, who dad was a policeman it was on the beat on 6th and Walnut Street. And the door opened, and I hope I'm not embarrassing her, but this is great. I heard these heels clicking across this tile floor. Tick, tack, tick, tack, tick. And I said, look, I said, who is that? I said, Sharon, who is that? She said, oh, that's my friend Bernadette. I said, well, Bernadette, the name alone was enough for me right there. So I got some kind of introduction. Well, anyway, I'm all plastered up. I got clay on I got the Army coat on, I'm plastered. Got my glasses band-aided together in the middle here, hair slicked down with a part going this way. Look, I wasn't too much to look at that time. So I'm sure she looked at me and thought, oh my Lord, who is this? What does he want? Anyway, so we used to have dances out there and on Friday nights. So I got up enough nerve, I think, that I said, would you like to, go to one of these dances? She said, I guess so. Yeah. Girl, I pulled up in front of her house. Look, I was sharp as a tack. I had my black suit on, tied on, hair slicked down, got rid of the Band-Aid in the middle of my glasses. She opened the door and said, that's you? So that's where it began, baby. That's where it began. And we had a lovely romance time. Got married in 67, had our firstborn in 68. Then 10 years later, we had our lovely Kendra. She was born. And so we proud parents of 2 lovely children. Well, they're not children anymore. But I guess even if your children are grown, they're still your children, aren't they? Yeah. But we've had a lovely life, 54 years. I'm not complaining. I mean, I don't know if anybody else would have put up with me.
Ed, well,
I love them.
Let me just say this: as we look forward, because we're going to look forward from this time, we are going to get through this. This is what I tell myself every day. We are going to get through this. We're going to be able to touch and agree and hug again. But when those young people tap on your door down there at your studio, what advice do you give them, or what advice would you give them? Having looked back on your own life, and some of those kids, it's a tough little neighborhood. What do you say to them, Ed?
Well, I tell them the same thing I tried to emanate for myself. I say, look, find out what you want to do. Find that person that's doing what you think you want to do. Go and learn from that person and see if this is really where you think you fit. You see. Don't come in thinking you see all these things in my place here, like I saw in Barney's place, thinking, oh my God, this is where it doesn't start there. It starts from the lower level and you have to work your way up, you see. And young people, we live in such a society today that everything is quick gratification. You got the internet. All you got to do, you can't spell a word, ask Siri. You know what I'm saying? Look, everything is spelled out for you now. It's not like that when I was growing up. We didn't have that type of instant gratification. We had to create our own universe. We had to create our own space and time. But now, everybody wants it as of now. And so I tell them, look, it takes time. You have to develop what you're trying to do, your talent. If you want to be a painter, you have to develop your painting skills. You have to draw. You have to learn how to draw. And drawing is the basis of all art form. Drawing is the basis of sculpture. Drawing is the basis of painting. You have to draw first. Then you go into your painting or your 2D. And then you go into 3D. And that's how it works. So I tell them, just be patient. It takes time. It's not an overnight situation, And I've been lucky. And some of us aren't as lucky as most people will be, because some don't want to spend the time. And you got to spend the time. And that's what's so important about becoming an artist, particularly a self-employed artist. but you got to do other things to get to that point, you see. I wasn't always making art. I had to go out and get a job, a real job, you know. I've waited tables, I've made signs. I worked at the old powder plant over in Charlestown. And the best thing over in Charlestown for me was when I got fired. I fell asleep. The woman took a long break, and I went out and took my break, sat down by the shed, because we was working at night. And I didn't know, I was just gonna be out there about 10 minutes. I was gone. I was out like a light. Guy kicked my foot, said, "Where's your badge?" I said, "Badge? I got it right here." He took my badge off while I was asleep. And I was on my 90-day probation period, which would have ended on the next Monday. This was the weekend. And they let me go. Best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't like the job no way. So I often wonder whatever happened to that man who kicked my foot. Maybe he saw me on TV. That's that man I fired. That's that man. Why did I do that? Oh, Lord. But anyway, you pay the price.
Yeah. We have a way of saying
pay
that
the price. You got to get out there and you got to do your thing.
Yeah. When one door closes, another one opens. When God closes,
that's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
And the old folks used to say, you have to crawl before you walk. So Ed Hamilton,
that's right. That's right.
Call, my darling. And I am so happy to be the one to interview you as you are being honored as the Louisvillian of the Year. As far as I'm concerned, you're my Louisvillian every year. And you are so special and such a gift to our city. So I'm going to turn it back over. I hope that people will be inspired by your story. I always am. And I don't know why when I talk to you, I always get sort of tearful because I just think about how important you are and how down to earth you are and just never change and a man of faith. So thank you, advertisers, for this opportunity to interview my dear friend, Ed Hamilton. I love you and congratulations again. And we can all give you a big hand clap.
Thank you, baby. Appreciate you.
All right, that was great. Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Ed. We're proud that you call Louisville home and are grateful for all you do for our community and our world, for that matter. Additionally, thank you to all of our Louisvillians of the Year in attendance today. Let's give them another round of applause. I'd also like to thank our event sponsor, Cave Hill Cemetery, and they, of course, need a round of applause, too. This wouldn't be possible without you. And we want to thank Kat from Catalyst Creative for her live illustration that you've been watching this last hour. Fantastic. And the generous supporters and volunteers who've helped with this event. Catalyst Creative, MCM CPAs, and advisors, Athens Paper, MPI Printing, United Mail, Greater Louisville Inc., GLI, of course, Live in Lou, St. James Court Art Show, Preston Arts Center, Alex Porter, and Rhonda Harshfield. All great. We are so pleased to congratulate Ed Hamilton on behalf of Outfront Media, who has donated digital billboard space to honor Ed's achievements. Thank you to our partners at Outfront for this generous donation. On behalf of AAF-Louisville, thank you for coming and enjoy the rest of your day. If you're able to stick around just a few moments longer, Kat will be conducting the giveaway, drawing, and presenting her illustration of Betty's interview with Ed. Kat?
Here's what I have captured today as I step out of the drawing room.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I
I
was actively listening to Ed's conversation and being able to listen to the interview. And here's what I saw in your conversation, Ed. You know, we started off talking about you as a teacher, an artist, a mentor. You gave great accolades to your wife and the love of Bernadette, and how everything you operate is done under the spirit of family and values, integrity, love, and support. And you bring to life people in past history. You talked to us about growing up on Walnut Street as a kid, with a bunch of roller skates, and you were a latchkey kid that kind of ran around the neighborhood, and you felt like your neighborhood was hypnotic and pleasurable and very historic. And then you found your calling as an artist really when you stumbled across a mailbox and a door. And I see so many things in this interview. There's so many doors that you went through. So I feel like you've got like just a lot of symbolic doors. And you're opening doors for other people, which is fantastic. But beyond that door opening and the mailbox opening to the studio of Barney Bright, and you actually became his apprentice. And so with your love of the studio art, and your love of African-American history that has such strong roots in Louisville with your project on Booker T. Washington, and you really love to work on art and create art that honors people, that speaks to the times. And you said that you'd love in a conversation to have lunch with your birth parents, and then you'd love to talk to Mr. Rodin and just say, how did you do that? And what inspired you? We also talked about Black love and the love you had for Bernadette and your wife. And again, it was this door. You talked about your first date and hearing the click, click, click of those heels. And beyond that door, and after that, it was just a done deal. And you've been super, super happy and have a rich family and lots of great memories and really exciting times. You did mention as your footsteps as a teacher here down at the bottom that you want to give people and students advice around how drawings is really the fundamental basics, and you have to have patience in your craft and really work diligently around what you're doing. And you have to work your way up. You can't walk in and be the first Picasso of the world. It takes a lot of time and dedication. So this is just a visual summary that is now part of a new door for you and a time capsule of your history captured in a visual conversation. So thank you guys for letting me be here.
Yes. Great
also,
job, Kat.
Oh, thank you guys. And you all will get a copy of this as a follow-up. And something else I want to do now is also share with you. I'm going to share my screen one more time with you guys because one of our sponsors today is also Preston Art Center. And they are a local mom and pop's art center. And I advise and recommend that you all shop local for Christmas. And they've got a lot of great, fantastic things that they can give you as a novice artist just starting off, or maybe you want to dabble in some creativity over the holidays or going into the new year. And so they can hook you up with all the great supplies, whether you're a beginner or a novice. But today they have offered a supply bag. And so what I love about Preston Art Center, and those people that are not in Louisville, we will get you this if you are the proud recipient of this bag. And what you get is a sample selection of some of the greatest art supplies. And they're the really nice art supplies, like the really good expensive ones. So they've donated a grab bag for us as a local sponsoring community partner for the Louisville Advertising Federation. And everybody's name, if you can see this wheel, thumbs up if you see the wheel. Thumbs up. All right, everybody that is registered today gets an opportunity to win this bag. So on the count of 3, I'm going to spin the wheel. 1, 2, 3. And let's see who the winner is. All right. It's Dennis Clayton?
Denise.
Denise Clayton.
Denise. That's Denise.
Very exciting. So we'll connect with you on how you get that grab bag.
Thank you. Although I have no artistic talent, but I will turn that over to my son.
There you go. The gift that keeps on giving, Denise.
Yes. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for being here today and participating. And we have one more round of applause for Ed before we get out of here. Thanks so much. And that concludes our program. We're welcome to hang around and chat if you'd like to. We'll be here as long as you want. But thank you all so much.